Hello my lovelies and welcome to the channel. I'm trying something a bit new this week. I got a new toy before Christmas and I'm taking you along with me to see how it works. So in a vacuum seal bag I have got rabbit portions and I'm just going to show you in real time how long it takes to seal the meat up in the vacuum seal bags. Now I've mentioned this before, this one particular chamber vacuum sealer is from Vivor. And if you're doing a lot of meat or vegetables, it's well worth getting one of these. If you're only doing a little bit, then by all means, for years and years we used a cheap one out of Lidl, I think it was, and that was absolutely fine. But for us, we've decided to upgrade the equipment and get something that's going to last us a bit longer and is a little bit more heavy duty. So as you can see, that has just sucked everything in, doing what it needs to do. And that's how long it takes for whatever you're putting in the bag to seal. Now I've put a little bit of butter in with the rabbit just because it can be quite a dry meat. It's very lean. And we're going to take it over and cook it now. So I got a sous vide machine before Christmas and I have been desperate to use it. But I just haven't had the opportunity to. So I have read up and come to the conclusion that cooking it at 60 degrees for 4 hours is going to be the best way to do it. Because this is wild rabbit, it's probably going to be quite tough. So I need to do it for the 4 hours. If this was farmed rabbit, which is harvested a lot younger and it tends to be a lot faster growing, I would probably only do it for about 2 hours. Anyway, this is all new to me. It's a learning process and I'm quite excited about it because it opens up a whole world of possibilities for cooking meat and some vegetables too, but I'm experimenting with meat to start with. Now this particular sous vide machine does connect up to your phone, so you can make sure that it switches off. It has alarms and everything, which can be quite handy. We're fogging up a little bit. I got a bit close to the pot there. So this pot is on a trivet, so it's not directly on the worktop, so it won't leave any marks. So yeah, we're going to leave this and I'll come back to it when it is ready. Whilst we're waiting on that happening, I have got what I thought was a leg of lamb out of the freezer, or David got what he thought was a leg of lamb out of the freezer. So I'm going to prepare this to roast. So I've got some rosemary from the garden and I've also got some honey-fermented garlic cloves. Now these are really, really good for your immune system. Great way to preserve garlic if you grow it. And it's also a really, really handy ingredient to have. So I'm going to spoon some of these out because I don't want to contaminate what's left in there with meaty hands. And we might glaze this with some of the honey too, because I think that will be really, really lovely. And I'm just taking the meat out of the bag. We had a disaster in the fridge. It tipped backwards and all the blood leaked through the fridge, so I've had to clean that out. So note to self, don't balance things precariously. Make sure there's proper space in there when you're defrosting. Yeah, it's always tricky trying to find space in the fridge. Even though we do have quite a large fridge, there's never enough space. It wouldn't matter how big it is. We always seem to manage to jam it up there. So moving swiftly on, I am taking the rosemary off the stem just into little mini sprigs so that I can poke that into the meat and just make it a bit easier, because rosemary is one of those ones that it's really, really lovely to have, but it can be quite overpowering if you get too much. So I'm just breaking this up. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stab some holes in the meat. It was at this point that I realised I didn't have lamb. I actually had a leg of venison. It didn't smell lamby, but in for a penny, in for a pound. I'll prepare it the same way anyway. So what I'm doing is I'm putting the holes in the meat. You can see me picking some deer hair off. Oh, I couldn't believe it. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting the hole in and I'm putting a clove of the honey fermented garlic in there and a sprig of rosemary, and just studding the entire venison leg this way. So we've just about finished everything. Get a couple of extra cloves in there for good health and yumminess. And this is going to go into the oven, quite a low oven, I'd say 160, 170. My oven has a tendency to run quite hot, and I'll put that in there for about 3 hours probably. But I will put my meat thermometer in just to make sure that it is cooked the way that we like it. So as you could see, I was just about out of the honey fermented garlic, so I'm going to crack on and make another batch, because that batch, it was, oh goodness me, it must be at least 2 years old. And that's the beautiful thing about a ferment like that, is it lasts for such a long time. It's not going to go off because it's fermented, as long as you keep it in really good conditions. I mean, they found honey in the Pharaoh's tombs. That's what, 5,000 years old. So, you know, it's just amazing stuff. Now I'm trying a wee experiment here. I'm just breaking up a bulb of garlic that we grew in the garden last year. It's a wee hack that David had said to me that he found worked. And what you do is you put the cloves of garlic in and you give it a good shake. Now, I have to say, I wasn't overly impressed with this. I found it didn't really work very well. So, you know, I wouldn't recommend this. I don't know if the garlic was maybe still a bit too wet and fresh, and so the skin wasn't coming off as easily as maybe stuff that you get in the supermarket that's been stored for a bit longer. But anyway, I found that I did have to just go through and top and tail the garlic cloves and take the skin off that way. So it did take a wee bit longer than I had hoped, but you know, I would rather do a good job and make sure that I've not got bits of skin on there. So now that I've finally got all the cloves of garlic peeled, I've got my big bucket of honey, and it's time to put the honey on top. Now the jar that I'm using is a special fermentation jar, so it has an airlock built into the lid. You don't have to do this. You can just use a regular jar with a screw top lid, and what you will need to do is you will need to burp it every day. Now this honey is it's set, and that's absolutely fine. It's not going to cause an issue. You know, I might add a little bit more at a later date just to top it up. I'll see how it looks, but there will end up being more honey in here than it looks at the minute. So I'm just putting that on top of the garlic cloves, and the idea is that the liquid gets partially drawn out of the garlic, and will mix with the honey, so it infuses with the honey, and then the honey, because of the added liquid content, starts to ferment, and you've got the sugars in there, which also kickstarts the fermentation process. So it just works really well. I do this in the run up to Christmas time with cranberries. If you're looking for a cranberry glazed, honey glazed ham, that works really, really well too. So that's maybe something to think about. You can start that right now, and it will, you know, be ready for next Christmas, and it'll quite happily bubble away. because this honey is set, I am going to pop it in the hot press just to help that honey melt. It's quite cold in our house, so I just want to give it the best start that I can. And you do what works for your house. I love this. We found out about it probably during COVID, actually. And when I got COVID, this, like the fermented honey, drizzled on top of some poached eggs with some dried nettle seeds, was just about the only thing that made me feel human. And I've recommended this to friends for their kids, and the kids absolutely love it. Mine, on the other hand, well, that's another story. But anyway, we can't win every battle. So I'm just putting the rubber ring into the lid that goes on this jar. I had to give it a wash. I'm just showing you it has the wee airlock in there that will pop up as it needs to release the gases. So it just takes any guesswork out of it, and it means that you're not having to remember to burp the jar. So I would try and coat these cloves of garlic in honey, but it's a bit thick. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to pop that in the hot press. So this is actually a couple of weeks later, and as you can see, the honey is all liquid and it's still fermenting. You can tell because there's the bubbles there. And there is still a little bit of solid honey because I've put it back into the pantry. It's no longer in the hot press, and it's just quite happily doing its thing, infusing. So I would suggest you leave it for a minimum of 6 weeks, but the longer the better, really. And it just makes the most beautiful accompaniment for so many things, as well as being highly medicinal. David and I managed to escape the children and go on a wee adventure. I love exploring the wild places that just, I don't know, there's something about it that just makes my soul feel alive. And on this particular day, we went up to the head of the glen, and I've never been up here, but my goodness, I was not disappointed. To be able to come out and not really see a soul is quite a beautiful thing. I don't know, what do you think? After our adventure, it was time to get back and have dinner. The relentless wheel of what to make for dinner. Thankfully, I have that sous vide rabbit. I know it probably still looks a bit raw in the bag there, but I promise you it's not. It is well and truly cooked, and it feels very, very tender. So I am heating up some oil in my cast iron skillet, and usually I would like to do this with lard, but I've actually not got that much lard left, so I'm having to use oil. And what I'm going to do is what we call KFR. So I'm going to put the cooked rabbit portions into a bag of seasoned flour, and I will just tell you what I put in. I'm also making some chips to go with this because it appeals to the little kids, and you know, we have to do things that appeal to them. So anyway, on with the seasoned flour. In there I have got a cup of plain flour. I've got some table salt, dried thyme, dried basil, smoked paprika, dried oregano, celery salt. I have got some garlic granules, black pepper, some mustard powder, ground ginger, and I think that was everything. I might have put some onion powder in there as well, I think. Yes, I did. I just looked up imitation KFC recipe and adapted it a little bit to everything that I had. So now that the chips are in and the oil is just getting hot, I am going to go ahead and put the rabbit portions in. So in these bags I have got the back legs, because they're the meatiest part of the rabbit, so they're quite nice to do. I'm just going to cut the bag open, and it looks very liquidy in there, but don't worry, that's what happens when you sous vide. It does get quite liquidy. And there was also the butter in there. Next time, I don't think I would worry about putting the butter in. I don't think it needed it. You know, this is going to be deep fried or shallow fried, so it, you know, I don't need to worry about having that butter. If I was bringing it out and just serving it as is, then yes, by all means, I would put the butter in. Now, note to self for next time, don't overload the bag that you are using for a flour dredge. And also, rabbit bones when they're cooked are quite sharp and will pierce the bag. So another reason not to overload it. There's Thomas getting in on the act. He always likes to be included. So it's about this point I'm like, yeah, I might have to do a couple of batches. But anyway, we will give this a shake and see how we get on. Yeah, Thomas loves to jump about when the cameras are here. He's he's not shy as our Thomas, although he might like to pretend that he is. So I think that oil's probably just about hot enough. I know I've probably said that a couple of times now. I do have a larger cast iron frying pan, but I was trying to get away with not using it because you really need a lot of oil in that. And I'm trying to use as little as possible. So this is where I realised I had a bit much in there. So I'm just having to move things about and coat it in the flour. So now we're finally ready to get this rabbit in, and I'm just going to lay it out in the pan, and I can see that the oil is definitely hot enough because it's sizzling away really nicely. And I'm just going to see how many that I can get in this pan, because you don't want to overload it. It reduces the temperature of the oil too much, and it makes it really, really awkward for turning things around too. You need that heat to get in there, and you want your food to have as much contact with the oil as possible. So because the meat is already cooked, I am not looking to have this in the pan for too long. What I'm looking for it to do is basically to reheat the meat through and also to crisp up that coating. So these I'm able to have the oil at a higher temperature to allow it to crisp, because I don't have to worry about the meat cooking. Now, previously when I've done KFR, what we used to do was we would poach the rabbit to make it nice and tender and to ensure that it's cooked. And that was always quite tricky because, again, you could take it too far and then the meat would just be falling off the bone, which was wonderful. But, it's no good when you're trying to do KFR and you actually want that meat on the bone. So I've finished cooking the chips there, and I've got the rabbit has been staying warm in the oven whilst I cook it in batches. So you can see it's looking lovely and crispy. I'm just going to serve that up in a dish and everybody can help themselves. It's proper family style dinner where everyone tucks in and just takes what they would like. And I'm quite pleased to announce that I got the younger two to try some, and Thomas at least said that he really liked it, and Cora was still a bit iffy, but I'm taking that as a massive leap forward. I'm really, really pleased about that because trying to get my kids to eat and try different things can be really, really difficult at times. So there's just a close-up so you can see how crispy it is, and it was delicious. So because the rabbit was such a success, we thought, let's give it a whirl with venison. Venison was really the reason that we bought it. We've heard about steak being cooked sous vide being the most tender way you will ever have it. So I have vacuum sealed some venison steaks into the bag. We're doing a pack for us and a pack for a friend of ours who really enjoys venison. And I have set it at 55 degrees for 2 hours. And I think that was absolutely ample. And it was the right setting to have that at. The beauty of this is you don't have to have it on the hob. You can have it tucked away in a wee corner, and that's it, done. And it doesn't look very appetizing, and you can see what looks like blood to be in there. Please, trust the process. Do not worry about it. I was a bit disconcerted at this point. I have to hold my hand up, but fear not, it does come good. So I'm just heating up that cast iron skillet again. I really enjoy cooking on the cast iron, especially when you're frying things. I find it is probably one of the best things to cook on. Now I'm just putting a little bit of lard into the pan. I don't need that much. All I'm going to do is I'm going to scare the venison just to give it a little bit of a crust on the outside. It's already perfectly cooked through. The camera's not focusing very well. I do apologise. I'm hoping it comes back into focus. So I've scared it with the frying pan, and I'm just going to cut it in half so you can see what it looks like. And for me, this is perfectly cooked. It's still pink in the middle, but there's no blood coming out. So I will be doing this again, and I will be adding flavours to it because I didn't add any this time. I'd like to thank you for joining me this week, and until next time, take care.